Yo, what's up boys? It's Betta here with the second update video / build guide of the Spectral Throw Dexterity stacking Deadeye. Should you have not seen the very first video, I recommend that you go ahead and check it out on how to level through the campaign and to get the build started off with. You can catch me live on Twitch every single day, so should you have questions or maybe need help, pop on into my stream, or you can pop into my Discord as well and ask away. I'm always willing to help. The total budget for this variant is 571 chaos divided by 128 chaos, which is the current divine price. That gives us around about 4.4 divines. However, you could easily put it together for less depending on what you really want on your gear pieces, but I did ensure you shouldn't go over the 5 divines, as I did double check the listings of each of the items. I have broken down the cost of the items and included trade links for you under the notes section in the path of building, which can be found down below in the description for you. And also, please drop a like, subscribe, and maybe share the video, as it does help me out a lot to reach more exiles. Instead of scaling lightning damage with Hand of Thought and Motion, we now scale cold damage instead with a Hunter Influence Claw for the 1 to 4 cold damage to attacks per 10 dexterity, whereby we can easily gain 150 to 600 cold damage with 1500 dexterity. Our damage is at around about 1.9 million pinnacle boss DPS and around about 5.5 attacks per second. Alongside that, we also have 80% critical strike chance and 540% multiplier. The total DPS that you can expect is around about 5.5 million pinnacle should the boss or the enemies be at the very edge of Spectral Throw before it returns to you, because you can easily get 3 hits on them that way, maybe even 4, maybe even 5, but I did round it off to around about 3 hits, as that is more realistic. Defensive wise, we are less of a glass cannon than the previous budget, with 45k effective hit pool, 4000 life with around about 1000 life on hit and leech. Alongside with that, we also have 85% evade chance, 45% chance to block, and 29% spell block. And then lastly, we of course have our trustworthy 100% suppression chance. As we are cold based, we are able to freeze and chill pretty much everything, making the build way more comfortable as we shatter our enemies before they can even hit us. The weakest point of our defense, I'd say, is most likely the chaos damage, as we do not have any chaos resistance, so do be very careful with chaos degens or even the extra damage from map mods and altars as well. In terms of content, you can do most strategies in T16 mapping, except for like the crazy ass Rogue Exiles and Juice Delirium. Other than that, all invitations are doable, except for the Feared, which is really dodgy to do. And then boss-wise, we can do Shaper, Cyrus, Cortex, Maven, and even Uber Elder are all doable, but do be warned, you will die on these fights should you be careless of the mechanics. You can do T17s, however the damage is sort of lackluster, and as a result it does feel pretty shitty, especially when you get randomly one shot from your defenses failing. Modifiers that you have to, or actually should, avoid are Reflect elemental damage and Fizz Reflect. Along with that, the reduced effect of non-curse auras, minus max resistance, and Fizz's extra chaos with Wither is really bad to run, but it is still doable. It's just that you can expect to die, obviously. Other than that, for the altars, projectiles are fired in random directions is just terrible, alongside with the reduced defenses per frenzy charge, and of course any negative resistances should be avoided too. Starting off with the gearing, obviously you need an R level 83 Imperial Claw that's got the Hunter influence, and then what you're going to do with this base is you're just going to spam a few Deafening Essences of Hatred for the flat added cold damage until you land the modifier, which is 1 to 4 cold damage to attacks with this weapon per 10 dexterity, and then should you have an open suffix, just slap on increased critical strike chance. And then you can go ahead over to the League Mechanics Ruin Binding, and then you can pretty much craft on the added lightning damage, or you can put on cold should you have the ruins for it. I would avoid putting on fire damage, as it's not really that beneficial for us. Because we are no longer dual wielding the Hand of Thought and Motion, we have lost the 24% increased dexterity chance. So to make up for this, instead we are going to be using a brutal restraint jewel that gives % increased dexterity, and then along with that, it also gives us some other decent nodes like increased critical strike chance and attack speed. And then along with that as well, you can also get like projectile damage and flat dexterity as well, which is really beneficial for the build. But in order to find this jewel, I've got a really easy way for you to find it, especially in terms of keeping this build in a budget. And let's jump on over so I can get into it for you. Alright, so there is this really cool website called the Timeless Jewel Calculator over here. It's very easy for you in order to find your jewel. So here in the drop down, what you're going to do is select Brutal Restraint. It does not matter which Conqueror it falls under, because we are not making use of any of the keystones in that. You do not have to worry about that. And then over here underneath Add Stats, you're going to type in Dexterity, and then you're going to select the % increased dexterity, and obviously we want 2 nodes. And then critical strike chance, we want at least 2 of these nodes as well. This is the very minimum that you need for the jewel, and you shouldn't have to worry about getting anything else in that for the time being, because as I did mention, this is on a budget, so this way it is best for our budget at the moment. And then down below over here, you'll see it says deselect. What you want to do is click on deselect, so it deselects all of the nodes. And now what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to allocate all of the nodes which we are actually using for the build, which is going to be Intuition, Weapon Artillery, Quick Step, Aspect of the Links, Forces of Nature, Multi-Shot, Thrill of the Battle, and Heartseeker. And then along with this as well, we're also using Survivalist, and of course Feather for the max 1 frenzy charge, and Herbalism as well. But that's not all of them. We are also using Acuity. So now that we have got all of our nodes selected, what's going to happen now is that, oh yeah, I forgot to select Inveterate as well. There we go. Okay. So now that we have all of our nodes selected, what you can go ahead and do is just click on Search. Now what this is going to do is it will find every single timeless jewel that has got the 2 nodes with 5% increased dexterity and at least 2 nodes with the increased critical strike chance, alongside with all of the nodes that we have specifically selected. So then all that you're going to do is you'll click on the matches over here, and then it's going to show you exactly what each of the nodes have got according to the number of the jewel, right? So realistically, looking at these ones, there's like 5 that's got dexterity in that. These will be super expensive, okay? So ideally, what you're looking for is ones that have only got 2 increased dexterities, right? So typically those first ones and that will be very expensive. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go ahead and browse through it. And now say you can see over here, we got one with 2 dexterities and that. So then you'll just click on trade, and then boom, it will automatically open it up into a separate trade window for you. And it will search specifically for that number. And then that way you can find your jewel really easily. Just do note that it might take some time going through them, as majority of these jewels will be very expensive. But do not worry, I have gone through multiple of them and I have found many that were going for between 30 to 50 at max 100 chaos, so it will be very easy for you to find them. Obviously this is just a time-based thing, so you will have to go through them for a little while. And another cool thing to note is when you do hover and click on each of these, it will highlight the nodes, whereby all of the nodes that you're looking for, it'll show you exactly what they have. And then alongside that, it will also show you what the other nodes have too, just so you have a basic idea of what you are buying. That way you don't have to actually import it into Path of Building, which makes things super easy for you. I will have a link down below in the description for you, which will take you to this website, and then that way you can easily find your jewel. Alright, moving on to the rest of the gearing real quick. We are still using the Fractal Thoughts helmet. Just do remember that your strength needs to stay higher than intelligence in order for you to gain all of the bonuses out of the helmet, as I previously discussed in the previous video. Other than that, we are now using a Surveillance Shield for the increased chance to block and spell block as well. It also gives a little bit of armor and some additional ward. But not only that, when we do block, we trigger a socketed elemental spell whereby we have got Flame Wall for the additional projectile damage that we gain when our Spectral Throw does go through it. And then obviously Purifying Flame, which does give Consecrated Ground for the reduced effects of curses on us when we're standing in it. And obviously it also provides just a little bit of extra regen. It's just like a small quality of life thing. And then obviously I am using a Frost Bomb for the cold exposure. That way enemies have the reduced life regeneration rate. So that way dealing with regen enemies is not a pain in the ass pretty much. And then for our boots, we are using Garakan's Flight. The reason being is it gives a little bit of dexterity, some much needed movement speed, and we're also immune to burning, shocked, and chilled ground, which is really comfortable for mapping, so you don't have to worry about that, especially if you're running the Searing Exarch altars and that, whereby the enemies always have burning ground. That way you can just mitigate it and you don't have to rely on grabbing the Soul of Aberrath Pantheon. But mostly we're using these boots for the high amounts of evasion that it provides us with, and the additional 2 to maximum life per dexterity, allowing us to bring our life up just a little bit extra. For your gloves, you want to have dexterity, increased attack speed, and some life alongside any extra resistances, and maybe try find a base that's also got an open prefix. That way you can craft on the adds lightning damage to attacks. That way it goes hand in hand with the claw enchant, so you can get a decent amount of shock, around about 10%, just for that slight extra damage bonus. And then obviously you want to have chance to suppress spell damage on it, just for the additional suppression, even though it's not really needed. And then obviously the gain 1 rage on attack hits, giving us 30% more attack damage while we are at 30 rage. For your rings, ideally what you really want is to get as much resistances as possible, alongside any life and maybe some increases to flat damage, or even the increased damage like I've got on this one. But you do not have to worry about that. Just ensure that you're getting resistances and some life alongside with the extra dexterity. And then obviously you need to make sure that there's an open prefix on these, so you can craft on non-channeling skills, have got -7 to total mana cost. This is so that you can bring down the total mana cost of Spectral Throw. That way you don't have to worry about your mana sustain or ever actually running out of mana. Moving on to the amulet, you're going to pick up a base that's got the increased dexterity implicit. It can only be 13%, whereby you can just use a Blessed to make it 15%. And then obviously you're going to want to use attribute catalysts on it, so that way you can have at least 18% increased dexterity. And then all you need to do is just slap a few deafening essences of sorrow. In this instance, I just used one and I managed to land a life roll, so I just stuck with it and put on strength and intelligence for the intelligence and strength requirements for the build. For the annoyance, you must anoint Disciple of the Forbidden for the minimum to power charges and to gain a power charge on kill. This is so that we can bring up our critical strike chance a little bit more, as we are no longer using the increased critical strike support gem, and instead we're now using Bone Chill, but I'll get into that in a little bit. For the belt, once again, you want to have one that's got 13 to 15% increased dexterity implicit over here, and then you're obviously going to use the attribute catalysts. That way you can push it up to 18%. And then, just like our amulet, you're going to use Deafening Essences of Sorrow for the dexterity roll guarantee, and then pretty much just use a few until you land a decent life roll with some resistances. And should it have an open prefix, you can of course craft on the increased elemental damage with attack skills. Lastly, for the body armor, you just pretty much want a evasion base. And then obviously you want to have dexterity on it, once again, with a little bit of life and some resistances. That way you can just cap out your resistances. And then also try and find one that has got an open prefix. That way you can craft on the increased maximum life on that. However, should it not have an open prefix, it is not a train smash. Do not worry too much about it. And then obviously for the implicits, you must get the Eater World's 5% chance to block spell damage, just to bring our spell block up just a little bit more, alongside with our Surveillance Shield. And then obviously for the other one, you want to get increased critical strike multiplier for attack damage with Searing Exarch. Quickly moving on to the Thread of Hope jewel, you must use one whereby it only affects passives in a massive ring. The reason why we're using this is so we can easily obtain Slate of Hand, Blood Siphon, Harrier, Hide Killer, Path of the Hunter, and Finesse alongside with Quick Step, Weapon Artillery, and Aspects of the Links. This way we don't have to travel all the way out, and it does give us some extra life, damage, and dexterity, of course, which is really good for the build. In terms of skill gems and the auras, we are using Herald of Ice now for the additional cold damage, but mostly for the cold explosions and that while mapping. That way our clear speed is improved even further. And then obviously we're still using Grace for the evasion rating and Purity of Elements for the additional elemental resistances and the immunity to all elemental ailments. And then you must link this to Enlighten. That way you're able to fit in all of your auras. And then alongside with this, we're also using Precision for the increased critical strike chance, not so much for the accuracy, as we already have a 100% chance to hit, so that does not matter. And then in the boots, we are still using Cast on Death Portal. That way, if you're near the end of the map and you die, you don't have to run all the way back, making it a lot smoother for you. And then, of course, we're still using Whirling Blades for the movement and that, just to get around a lot easier. And then in the gloves, I'm still using Blood Rage, once again, for the frenzy charges, the additional leech, and the attack speed that it gives us. And then we've got this linked to Life Tap alongside Sniper's Mark and our Mark on Hit. And in the claw, I'm still using Life Tap with Steel Skin and Automation. This way we can get rid of pesky bleeds, and it does take just a little bit of extra damage away from us, making us just a tad little bit tankier. In the chest, we are now using a 2120 Spectral Throw. You can pick up one of these for 5 chaos. They are absolutely dirt cheap. And then along with this, we're using Nightblade still for the elusive, for the additional critical strike chance, and for the chance to avoid attacks and multiplier that it also provides us with. And then we're obviously using cold penetration now instead of lightning penetration. That way we can deal more damage with our cold damage. And then of course we're still using inspiration for the more elemental damage and increased critical strike chance, but also more so to reduce the cost of our spectral throw. And then we are also using increased elemental damage with attack support for the more elemental damage. And then lastly, we're using Bone Chill for the more cold damage and for the increased damage that we gain via the chill effect. This is so that we are able to deal much better chills and much better freezes on enemies, making the build way more comfortable. And then lastly, moving on to the flasks, I'm still using exactly the same flasks as the previous update video, and that all I've done is just qualitied them and put on the implicit used when charges reach full. This way you don't have to worry about pianoing your flasks anymore. And now I am obviously using the prismatic tincture for the penetration and for the increased elemental damage with melee weapons. This tincture gives about a 40% increase to overall damage when it is active. Just do remember that it won't always be active, so you will manually have to activate it every now and then. The average uptime that you can expect of the flask is around about 50 to 70% of the time, depending if you are always killing enemies and always attacking. Alright, and that is it for the second update video. Should you have enjoyed it, please do drop a like and consider subscribing to my channel as well. And do remember, I'm live on Twitch pretty much every single day, so drop a follow there as well and come join in on the streams. It's always a fun time and it's always nice and chilled as well. Other than that, thanks for watching, Exiles, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.